Hey, what's up guys, it's Matt with Movement System. In this video, we're going to talk all about the essentials of strength training and conditioning 4th edition textbook. If you don't know already, this is the NSCA's CSCS textbook. So if you're taking the NSCA CSCS exam, you're going to be spending some time with this. So let's give you an idea of what to expect. This is a dense 735-page textbook all about the science of strength and conditioning. It's actually really exciting that this book exists because this is essentially something that we didn't know a lot about just a few decades ago. This book was basically created to summarize all of the research on strength and conditioning. So it's divided into 24 chapters, broken down starting with chapter 1, structure and function of body systems, going into biomechanics, bioenergetics, endocrine response, adaptations to training, anaerobic training like resistance training and interval training, as well as cardiovascular, more aerobic training. The book also covers age and sex-related differences, sports psychology, nutrition, performance-enhancing substances, test selection and administration, meaning how do we actually test athletes and make sure that they're improving and measure how much they're improving. For nutrition, there are a lot of guidelines that you want to memorize and then be able to apply. Things like the protein recommendations for endurance athletes versus strength athletes versus athletes looking to gain weight. You want to be able to remember those numbers, for example, 1.4 to 1.7 grams per kilogram body weight for strength athletes, and be able to take an athlete's body weight, multiply that by 1.4, multiply that by 1.7, and then be able to see if the athlete's current intake is within that range that you calculated. You can do the same thing for carbohydrates. It works the same way. Fat's a little bit different. We just use the RDA of 20 to 35% of total calories coming from fat. But you'll get all these details as you read the chapter in detail. Just remember, when you see those types of numbers, highlight them, take notes, practice doing those calculations. Chapters 1 through 11 make up the first portion of the CSCS exam called the Scientific Foundations. This is stuff that you would learn in an exercise science degree, but you don't necessarily need to have an exercise science degree to take the CSCS exam. You could also just self-study from the book. I know a lot of the students who watch this channel and watch my study videos do that. Now it's important to mention that the exam is actually based on current research as well as the textbook, so you do want to also keep up with the current research. This edition of the book is actually fairly old. This will be the current edition at least through 2025, but then they'll probably update to the 5th edition with a little bit more updated research. But that's a really important point because since this book was published, new research articles have came out, so new information can be added to the exam that's not necessarily in the textbook. I do have a study group called the Strength and Conditioning Study Group on Facebook where I do post these new research articles. So if you are studying for the CSCS exam, make sure you join that Facebook group. There's a link in the description below. Okay, through the second portion of the book, we have chapters 12 through 24. This covers things like warm-up and flexibility, exercise technique, program design for resistance training, program design for plyometric training, program design for speed and agility, as well as program design for endurance training. Basically, how to write strength and conditioning programs for a very wide range of athletes, whether it be cross-country runners or power athletes like a track and field shot put athlete or a sprinter, or a field sport athlete like a soccer or a field hockey player. Compared to a certified personal trainer exam, the CSCS is much more geared towards groups of athletes. So the programming is more based on typically percent 1 rep max, like you would assign to a large group of athletes. There's a little bit on RPE in here, but for the most part, the CSCS exam is focused on groups of high school, college, and even professional athletes. Now you can use this book and take the CSCS exam and kind of apply that knowledge as a personal trainer. A lot of gyms will recognize that as the higher level certification that it is because it is harder to get. But just know when you're studying this book, you're not getting quite as much on individual athlete assessment. It's more based on groups of athletes, how we would program for larger groups. In chapter 21, you'll learn all about periodization. This is a concept that a lot of people get overwhelmed with, but if you take it step by step, it's not too bad to learn. Periodization is just how we manipulate our training variables throughout the year to make sure that athletes are making continued progress towards their goal and not plateauing. I've done a bunch of videos on periodization on this channel, and I will continue to do periodization videos on the channel. So if you want to see those, make sure you subscribe. And in the last 3 chapters of the book, we have rehab and reconditioning. This is just kind of the basics of the rehab process, what a strength and conditioning professional would need to know about it. And then the last 2 chapters are all about organization and administration. So how gym equipment is set up, legal terminology, and things that you would need to know as a strength and conditioning professional, as well as things like the ratio of coaches to athletes that we need in the gym and how to supervise athletes and what to do in the case of an emergency. Out of all the chapters in the book, the ones that I really recommend spending a lot of time with are Chapter 9, Sports Psychology, as well as Chapters 15 and 17, Exercise Technique and Program Design for Resistance Training. Out of the thousands of students in my CSCS study group on Facebook, those are the 3 chapters that people consistently struggle with and are tested quite heavily, so it's really important that you know the details of those chapters. If you're just getting into this textbook and you're studying for the CSCS exam, I recommend going in order from Chapter 1 all the way to Chapter 24. I actually have a study calendar that I made that you can download for free in the description below that's helped a lot of people organize the way they study. I made this for a 2-month study plan, which is really only reasonable if you have a recent exercise science background. So if you just graduated with your exercise science degree, all that knowledge is fresh, and you feel like you can knock this out in 2 months, that's great. But a lot of people will need to extend that to 3 to 6 months, especially if you don't have an exercise science degree and you're learning a lot of this stuff for the first time. One thing I will say is there are not a lot of exercise technique videos. The book is obviously just pictures, which makes it quite difficult to learn exercise technique, and a lot of people struggle on that portion of the exam. So look for additional resources. I know Dr. Jacob Gooden has good videos on the CSCS as well. You can check out his videos. I have a few videos on my channel, as well as more in-depth videos in my full CSCS study course. If you are looking for the best way to prepare for the CSCS exam, you can check out the Movement System CSCS study course. It has a video to go along with each chapter and specific quizzes that I designed to help you really learn the concepts well. I recommend going through watching the Movement System study video, doing the Movement System study quiz, and then reading that corresponding chapter. That'll help you make sure you really understand the main concepts well, get all the details from the chapter, and you'll feel good moving from chapter to chapter. By the time you get through the course and the book, you'll feel great going into the exam. If you guys do have any questions about the book or the CSCS exam in general and how it works, go ahead and drop them in the comments below and I will make sure to get back to you. Although this is a very overwhelming book, and if you're just getting started, it may feel like a lot to take on, just take it one day at a time, one page at a time. Make sure you're learning a few concepts really well each day and making progress towards your long-term goal. And before you know it, you'll feel like this book is actually fairly easy to understand and that you can really apply this information to athletes, and you'll be ready to crush your CSCS exam. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks.